Hello, Green Chatters. Thank you so much for joining. It's David here on the Green Living Chat podcast. Whilst we get ready to wrap up on season 4 and getting into the holiday season, we decided to bring you an episode on our new Paradigms of Education segment where we share an interesting conversation we had in our mentorship session with interns at Eco Amet Solutions. And this presentation was made by our co-host, Dr. Daniel Fiifi Hagan. We hope you enjoy this conversation. Daniel, take it away.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. This is Daniel here, and I'm the host for today's episode. In this episode, we look at how to make our research ideas relevant in our society, and we explore how to come up with research ideas that are helpful and how we work through these research ideas. We hope that you enjoy this episode and that it's helpful to you as well. Here we go. The picture here on the left, I'm sure you can all see this. It's called our education system. And you can see that there are these different animals with totally different animals, right? Where their habitats are, what they are good at, but they've all been put into one system, and the exam is to climb the tree. And I think all of us here would acknowledge that, okay, the bird and the monkey might win, okay, depending on what goes into the specifics of climbing the tree. And then you're going to find, the little penguin suffering, and at least she can try to jump here and there, but little fish will just be out of the game completely. Okay, so little fish will be the one at the bottom of the class reports, getting all the bad grades. So it's a problem, and this is unfortunately how our education system is. I also want to be careful here is that what I'm saying here is not some kind of speaking against the education system. Unfortunately, this is how it is because it is difficult to meet everyone's needs. It is really difficult to do that. It's difficult to have specific teachers for each person, and ideally, each student should have a teacher. That's how it's supposed to be. But I don't know if there's enough money to pay that many teachers. And unfortunately, the teaching profession hasn't been patronized such that many people get into it. And so we have a problem with this. And of course, I tend to look at one of the biggest problems of education being lack of, not teachers, but lack of teachers who know what to do. More than half of the people who enter, especially in Africa, who enter into teaching are not doing it because that's what they wanted to do, but they're doing it because everything else is lost. And so, let me just fall back on teaching. So that creates a problem because if this is the kind of person who is entering into teaching, then what they are able to present or to give to the students becomes a problem. And so first of all, there is a problem in that the system is not favoring everyone. And then you have the teachers as well also having their own problems, and the disappointment that the teachers have passed on to the students. And so it's becoming a big issue. This is a very huge issue. And recently I've been doing a lot of things in education, and this is one of the things that I'm trying to see what I can do to help out. The Green Living Chat, our podcast, is actually doing very well to deal with this situation. Problem is that you might be in a program that really wasn't your first love, if I should put it that way. But then you have to deal with it. Okay, and here you would have to therefore go through some form of navigation to figure out, do I really fit into this program? And if I do, once you recognize that, okay, you might have a deficiency here or there, then the next question is, how do I deal with this problem that I have? And so this is where I want us to sort of acknowledge that we won't be good at everything, okay? And it's okay. This is where you look at your community and your society and you see what David can help me with, what Alex can help me with, what Guy can help me with, and what Esther can help me with. And so this is something that I am hoping that we can pay attention to as we go on. The figure on the right here, of course, it tells us what the training that we get from school does. My professor said every person who goes to school, if they are really to have benefited from school, they must graduate with knowledge of philosophy. Philosophy here, implies that you are able to look at a problem and think about it in a way that you're able to extract novelty and deal with the problem. This is where philosophy comes to play. And if you have been following the programs that we are having at the Green Living Chat podcast, or you can go back to the website, you will find that we have been doing something called philosophy in PhD. Okay, and it's on critical thinking. You don't need to be a PhD student to do it. But what we are trying to do is to challenge students to think. And in this photo, for instance, you find that this guy has asked a question and he's asking for multiple choice, true or false, or fill in the blanks, because that's how he's been trained. So we have a problem and we need to deal with this problem. And each one of us, is deficient here or there, and we are struggling with this system. And so the question now is, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it? I'm going to try to suggest some ways we can begin to tackle it. And hopefully that will help you in your school and after school and on all that. Okay. All right. When we look at the research process, this is where you usually find, okay, research idea, research design, collecting data, analyzing the data, and then the publication process. The biggest problem that we have actually is people usually think it is the analysis that we have the problem, okay, or the publication that we have the problem. But having been in education for a while, what I'm beginning to discover is that the first part is where we have the problem. And here is the reason why. Because usually we teach research design. We talk about, in school, we teach research design, how to design your research. They give you the thing that you need to do. And then we also teach data collection, how to collect your data. Sometimes, depending on where you are, you may learn how to analyze data. There is also a deficiency in analyzing the data, okay? A huge deficiency here in the analyzing data. And of course, the publication process, if you are going to go into graduate studies, or even, this is not just for those who are going to graduate studies, but wherever you find yourself, you enter into some form of publication because you need to make your work known, okay, either to your boss or, to whoever it is. And you submitting a report is in itself a form of publication. So we all go through some kind of publication process. But then the two biggest problems where we find are the research ideas and the analyzing data. And I've spent a chunk of my years in the university teaching this part. I find that in my university, for instance, I spent 2 years teaching people how to analyze data. And I realized that the people that I taught, after 2 years, about 50 students, after 2 years, the publication record for the university went up more than 500% because students knew how to analyze data. So it looks like it's a very important point. But I came to realize this, that there's even a bigger problem with research ideas, how to come up with a topic. Because if you don't have a topic, all these things are useless, right? And I found out that even though the publication, at a point in time, okay, the publication records were going up, we're getting more and more publications, which was all very good. But then it got to a point, okay, that I realized that even though we had a lot of publication, they were all looking like the same things. It looks like people knew how to analyze data, but they didn't have ideas. They didn't have ideas. And I think that this is something that has to be taught at a very early stage. We usually wait till maybe the master level, graduate school level to teach that. But I think that this has to be started right from the very first year. Okay. And it has to do with how you present what you have been given. So you are taught and you are given some knowledge. And then for you to discuss what you have been taught and to talk about how you think of what you've been taught. Because the more you think about what you've been taught, the more you begin to extrapolate the problems that exist in these things. Last year, I taught linear algebra. And one of the first assignments that I gave to my students was to write a report. After I gave them the possible things that we could be doing with linear algebra, the applications, the possible applications, I asked them to go out there and discover what they could use linear algebra to do to help with their studies. And it was a very fun homework that they were very surprised that it was a math class and they had to write a report, about something like that. And this ignited a lot of ideas. People started thinking about things and that, can we use the linear algebra to do this? Can we use it to do this? And what are the problems that persist in this? And I asked them to do a presentation on it. And I discovered that they started discussing these things. And most of them were ending their presentations with questions. And this is how training has to be done. Okay. So C.S. Lewis, who was an amazing philosopher and English teacher, said that people don't think about thinking. Okay, whatever you learn is someone's thought. But what we usually do is that we take the thoughts and then we repeat it, and that is all we do. We just repeat and we say. For instance, when you're arguing with someone about a topic, you go on Wikipedia and you do a quick search, and then you sort of repeat what Wikipedia has to say as your argument. But but that in itself is not an argument. Okay, for you to make a good argument, you have to think about someone's thoughts, and then you have a deduction. You deduce from it. And that becomes your thought. And that thought of yours begins to bring questions into it. So this is where I'm beginning to discover that more work needs to be done. And in this talk, for instance, I would like us to focus on this because this is where everything becomes a big deal. And David now is one of the co-founders of the Eco Amet Solutions. And one of the things that they have to do is to as the bosses, as those in the leadership, is to write grant applications to get money to do projects. But if you want to do a project, then you need an idea. So it's not just in academia; it's everywhere you go. Okay, it's everywhere you go. And I am also currently writing a proposal, a grant proposal, not for academia. Actually, there's a bit of academia in it, but actually it is to solve a problem within the community. And I just actually finished writing another proposal for a Ghana-China project in agriculture insurance. I also wrote another project between China and Pakistan to study available water, what is happening to the water, to the hydrological systems in between the two countries and on the belts and their borders there. But all these things, they translate into helping the society become better. And how do we come up with these topics? How do we think about these things? So this is where I want to help you a bit. So 3 things that I find necessary, we'll discuss it if you have questions. First of all is that you have no choice, you have to read. It's a saying that is popular and people really laugh at it, but I hate it so much with all my heart. It says, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. There is some truth to it, very, very unfortunately. But, I hate the fact that we embrace it. And many, many Africans say it and just embrace it. And, reading will inform you. Reading will inform you. And of course, many people, even if they read, do not think about what they are reading. Okay. How do you read? Okay, when you read, do you take time to think about it? Do you ask questions? Do you talk to people about what you're reading? This is what I do, for instance. I have different sections of my life. So I have a part of my life which is academia. I have a part of my life which I study philosophy. I have a part of my life which I study theology. I have a part of my life which I study the society. And in each chunk and there's another part that does education. And in each chunk, okay, I have people. I've created groups on WeChat and WhatsApp that I have people who are interested in these topics. That when I read something in any of these chunks, I discuss with them. I send them, hey, this, I read this and that. What do you think about it? And then we enter into discussions, and then more things come up, and then more questions come up, and then it gets me to go read more, and then I come and we have discussions. And so reading is very important, but also more importantly to discuss. And this is what I call literature review. Okay, literature review. When you read, it becomes what you think of. And then ideas, okay, here, when you read and you discuss, then you develop questions. Okay, and Aristotle said this. This is something I read somewhere in the middle of my PhD, and it just challenged me so much. Those who wish to succeed must ask the right preliminary questions. If you don't ask the right preliminary questions, it can lead you to another route completely different from where you want to go. So at the beginning, you need to ask questions. And someone will say, well, Daniel, how do you ask the right questions? Or how do you know what are the right questions? I would say that it is a skill you need to develop. And this is what my professor was talking about. We need to become philosophers, even in our studies. We need to think about what we are reading, the information we are getting, and then we challenge the information that we are getting. And that helps us to ask the right questions. And this leads me to my third point, which is that, you become more like the person to whom you speak. And if you're in school, that becomes, your colleagues or your teachers. And so finding the right mentor, okay, if you think that your teacher is not helping you or doing it for you, reaching out to someone to find the right mentor, because whomever you become a mentee of, will help you, will guide you. This is what one of my mentors taught me. This is a guy who is I looked for him and I have pursued him with all my heart. I've pursued him with all my heart. In fact, sometimes I even there was a time that he had traveled, and I begged my professor to pay him to come to our university to come and give a talk, because he is such a brilliant guy. He finished Harvard University with a 3.94 GPA out of 4. He developed a formalism for assessing causalities, cause-effect relationships between two things. I followed him for years. I was, paying money to travel wherever I needed to go to see him, to be with him, to listen to him, because I was learning one thing from him. I was trying to learn how he thinks. It wasn't really just about following him. I was learning how he thinks. Why does he think this way? And whenever he was organizing a class anywhere, I would attend. If I couldn't attend, I would ask anyone who attended to record it and send me the recording. So, this is kind of what you do. Find someone. And, at a point in time when I realized I couldn't learn too much from him because I had learned what I could from him, then I went to another person. This is kind of what you do. The goal is to become better than your teacher. So he said that undergrad students, they learn hard facts, they learn everything. Master students, they dig into research, okay? And here he highlighted that, MIT, a master student is expected to produce an original thesis. Original thesis, this is a very difficult thing to do. Original thesis means the idea hasn't been published, or someone hasn't worked on the idea, and what you're doing is new. Okay. And then the PhD students will have to produce something new. Okay. And that is why someone at MIT, someone who's finishing masters at MIT can compete with a PhD student somewhere else, because they have been trained. And my teacher kept saying that, my mentor kept saying, in Harvard University, it is no surprise for an undergrad student to publish a paper, to publish a top paper. It's not a surprise. That is what they are taught to do. And so, what can we also do? This is what we are thinking about. Here I say all kinds of research are permissible, but not all of them are beneficial, which is very, very true. Research topics are very circumstantial, depending on the place you are, depending on your ability and all that. I'm going to give you an example here. When I came to my university, my current university, I wanted to do a program called Geographic Information Systems, GIS. And GIS is something I have been thinking about so much, because when I was in Ghana, it was my dream program. So I came here, I didn't want to hear anyone say anything else. I went straight into GIS and I did it, and I loved it. But my university is the top university in climate sciences in China, and number 10, if I'm not wrong, or number 10 or number 11 in the world, in the entire world. It follows Harvard. Harvard is number 10 and my school is number 11, or Harvard is number 9 and my school is number 10. And And so I started asking myself, wouldn't it be better for me that within the circumstance I find myself, why don't I link my GIS to what my school is good at? Okay. So what I started doing then was that I went to the library and I spent like probably a semester to a year reading on GIS applications in climate sciences. And this became one of the best decisions I ever made, because within that university, there are experts and connections and networks, not just from my school, but students, people who have graduated from my university because of the reputation of the university, went into world-class fields. Okay, so it was therefore easy for me to reach out to these people and and talk to them and have discussions with them. And so this is something that I did. I connected myself with my circumstance, with my situation, and then I started solving problems within the society. And then I realized that I could do this in Ghana and all that, and I learned what I could do, and then I translated it in to apply some of these things in Ghana. And so this is very, very important, learning the circumstance around you and then adjusting to it. And then in my master program, I went to do atmospheric science or climate science, which is what my school is good at. And then I did further on it, I built up on it in my PhD. And this has been one of the best decisions that I ever made. Had I decided that, okay, there's another aspect of GIS that makes a lot of money, which I could have gone to. But I felt that I wouldn't be solving too much problems in that way, so I didn't go into it. So my first thing is, observe. Okay, look at your environment. Okay, look at what is going on, and try to figure out what are the problems. When you read materials, okay, look at sentences like, but this is beyond the scope of this study, or not just in academic papers, but even in social papers. Nature has a lot of social papers that you could be reading. And David loves to read some of these papers. So you can contact him to show you where he's getting these papers from. Sometimes I feel like he has a different internet he's using. And then look at some of these statements. This is beyond, or we still don't understand why, or that we lack understanding of why it's happening. And this is where you can be cropping where you can solve problems. Okay, and they don't need to be specifically that I'm going to solve it in academia, but you could be solving it in the industry as well. And David will talk about it. And then have discussions with accomplished people. I came to discover a secret. Let me share with you. I came to discover a secret that apparently I'm going to group all accomplished people into three groups. Okay, the very accomplished people at the top, the people who are between, and then those who are starting, right? The problem is with those in the middle. Okay, those in the middle, they can't make a decision sometimes where they are. And sometimes they become too proud. So they beat down on those who are starting. Okay, they discourage them. And you come to discover that if you cross those in the middle, those at the top, they're actually very nice and very welcoming. So what I started doing my PhD was I started reaching out to, if I'm learning a topic or I'm going to work on a topic, my boss gives me a topic to do. I go for the best person in the world and I write them an email. Okay, at least there will definitely be like about 5 to 10 names, and I'll choose about 3 of them. All right, if they don't respond, but the thing is that they actually respond. They really respond. And here is the thing. I'm going to show you something. What I learned is how to communicate with them. My friends usually ask me, how do you talk to these people? Because it seems like they always seem to reply your email. If you're talking to someone at the top, you need to let them know that you are serious. Okay. So what you need to do is that you don't just send them a question. This is what people usually do. Hello, sir. My name is this, and I'm a PhD student here, or I'm a master's student here, or I'm a bachelor student here. I am working on this problem, and I think I need your help to solve this problem for me. Please, can you help me? Can you give me your programming codes? Can you give me your data? Can you give me this? And just making demands. And if you write to them like this, you just put them off. Okay. The way I came to discover talking with this one, first of all, is to acknowledge them for what they've done. And also let them know that you are serious about them, that you have been pursuing their work, you have been reading their work, and you don't need to be smart. They don't expect you to be completely smart. They don't expect you to know all that they have done, but they want to see the enthusiasm. They want to see the seriousness. So I say, hello, say, my name is this, I'm studying this, and during my studies, your publications have been very, very helpful to me. And then I cite examples. For example, it might not necessarily be entirely like, yes, true that it was that much impactful, but it is good for them to see this. Okay, so I say, for instance, this paper of yours gave me this understanding. That paper of yours gave me this understanding. Sometimes I just write one. Usually I just write one. But if it's someone I really want to communicate with, I can cite like 3 of their papers, summarizing what it taught me and the questions that I am beginning to ask from their papers, even if it's not relevant to what I'm eventually going to ask them. Then I come in to say that I would love to have a conversation with you if it's possible by Zoom, or I'm currently working on a paper and I've come across this and that and that. And this is the abstract of the paper, and I give them a short abstract or a summary. And I say, I would love to hear your thoughts on it because I know you can give me the best of direction. And if possible, for you to be a co-author on this study. And I found that when I write this way to them, I get almost 100% response from the topmost top. And so this is what I would encourage you having these discussions with accomplished people. Now, this slide is very important, and hopefully in the recording you return to it, because in this slide it talks about the 15 challenging global problems. Okay? And I'll say that if you are going to go into a direction, whether in research or industry, it's probably better for you to look at this chart. Here is the thing. We are living in a systematic world. What that means is that, it is difficult for you to make a singular change just by yourself. And there are people making changes here and there, yes, but here is why they are making changes. They're making changes because they address problems that matter. Okay. So when you address a problem that matters, people respond. Look through these problems and see where you can direct your question. Read papers on this. Read discussions. Listen to discussions. YouTube has so many lectures. Just go to YouTube and type lectures on sustainable development and climate change, lectures on clean water, lectures on population and resources. And you find very intelligent people giving lectures. And they will almost always finish their lectures with questions. They'll say, yes, we are still trying to discover why this is that and why this or that. And some of the ways that we think we can tackle this problem is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you don't need to be a graduate student before you start thinking about these things. They help you to address it. So go on YouTube and listen to lectures. Okay, listen to lectures. What I do is that, for me, when sometimes I download these lectures or these podcasts, and then when I am riding a bicycle to work or something like that, I listen. Make use of every time. Look at what you are interested in, and then look at what is needed. Okay, how what you're interested in fits what is necessary in the society, and then look at what has been done, and then try to figure out what hasn't been done. Okay, and then pay attention to the limitations of the resources that you have. This is also very important. Sometimes when you understand the limitations, you can either say, okay, let me work with what I have, or you can say, let me develop something. Okay, let me develop something. So one thing that I also wanted to say, I thought I had it in my slide, I probably passed it, is that when I attend conferences, okay, and I meet leading scholars, I always ask them the same question. I ask them that usually when I meet them, I look for old people who are approaching retirement. Because these people have so many ideas. And I say, so in all your years of research, is there a problem that you've been trying to tackle that you still haven't been able to? And they always answer. They always answer. And if you are fortunate, they'll even tell you that I'm thinking that approaching it this way is good. I haven't tried it yet because I don't have the time now. But you can go for it. So this is something you can do. And this is not just for academia, even in the industry, you can also do this as well. So Einstein said, bear in mind that the wonderful things you learn in your schools are the work of many generations. All this is put in your hands as your inheritance in order that you may, look at what he says, receive it, honor it, truth matters. Okay, we shouldn't be careless of what we receive. Add to it. Okay, don't just receive and receive, but add to it. And one day, faithfully hand it on to your children. And I think this is very, very important. Okay, I think this is very important.
Thank you very much for joining us in this episode of the Green Living Chat podcast. We hope that you have not only enjoyed it, but you have also learned from it. This program was part of Eco Amet Solutions interns mentorship program, where we discuss how to do quality research and how to apply our research to the industry. We hope that you have learned a lot from it, and we look forward to your feedbacks on this episode. Until then, remember to live green and keep listening to the Green Living Chat podcast. Ciao!